Let's look at some nonfiction. Sure, why not? R.I.P. Andalusia. She was a fractious, hand-raised cat. Really unusual. Great, huge personality. Found in an abandoned house with a litter and bottle fed. She was so smart. She had this hamster toy that would vibrate when you pulled a string on it. And she taught herself to pull the string, and she'd hold it in her legs and pull the string cord with her teeth and then attack it over and over. I'm like, you're brilliant. Her favorite thing to do was to walk through the hangers in a closet and balancing on it. She was just hilarious. Okay, nonfiction. That's from my younger sibling from a comic strip. Written back in the early 2000s, called The Best Comic Ever. Hi, do you guys sell Friends? That's pretty hilarious, honestly. Alright, let's look at some books. I recently found out that the comedian actor Kevin Hart raises eagles and is really into eagles. That's interesting. People who are into hawks. There seems to be a lot of good high-lit books connected to hawks. H is for hawk. What's that about? Did everyone just like my side of the mountain, or is it something about paying attention? Oh, what's up, Prius? Book about hawks. Oliver Sacks. I've seen the movie, haven't read this. Awakenings. About catatonic patients being given L-Dopa and waking up for at least a brief while. A real life, Flowers for Algernon. Incredible. W.H. Auden thought it was a masterpiece. That's cool. Harold Pinter said it was remarkable. I got to meet Oliver Sacks at a signing lecture in New Mexico before he died, and I gave him a copy of my book, Towns of the Sandia Mountains, and he wrote me the nicest letter on his stationery. I'll find it sometime. And gave me a blurb I could use for my book. I had a quote from Oliver Sacks about how my writing was elegant and haunting or something like that. I don't remember. Excellent. Superb. I think that was his word. I'm I wrote a little local history book and I got a quote from Oliver Sacks. That's cool. Anyway, cool guy, interesting guy, fascinating, lively mind, obviously, from book to book. You'll never regret reading an Oliver Sacks book. This is kind of famously his most novelistic. No wonder it was adapted into a movie. Many chapters of The Man Who Tasted Shapes and Musicophilia and other books of his would make great movies. We'll read. Book about Magellan. Love reading about big figures in history, explorers, early stories. Yeah. Didn't he die on his trip? I interviewed Lawrence Bergreen once, talked to him about Al Capone because he wrote a book about Capone also. Super nice guy. Then I proposed writing, making an anthology where everybody wrote about Capone's secret hideouts. We got as many people as there were hideouts. And then, I don't know. That was the last I ever heard of him. What can I say? Every day I'm hustling. Oh, R.I.P. Hastings. That's definitely a Hastings tag. From back in the day, I think. Yeah. The gripping story of a 60,000-mile ocean voyage. It turned sorrowful, violent, and promiscuous. Ferdinand Magellan, daring circumnavigation of the globe in the 16th century. Oh. 3-year odyssey filled with sex, violence, and amazing adventure. This guy's a good writer, I know, with eclectic interests. Good popular historian. Lawrence Bergreen. It's kind of crazy that most mountain ranges are nameless. This is about Alaska in particular. Passion in politics in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Yeah. Including the story of Olaus and Marty Marie. Yeah, it's probably even more threatened right now. Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. I've spent some time up at the top of the world. I've been above the Arctic Circle, camped on the tundra, woken up to herds of caribou, galloped on all fours under a full moon. What? Gulped my own blood while chanting the ancient words. Oh, tidal wave. Good bookstore name. I used to like them a bit more. I took a ton of my books for young readers there, and they gave me like nothing for them. And I just felt like, I don't know, felt like book disrespect for a really good collection. And, you know, I don't know, vibes were off. I shouldn't take such issue with local stores and things like that. You know, it's amazing that there are locally owned stores at all. And ultimately, yeah, I go to all of them. You know, it's weird. Even something like Barnes and Noble is like, you know, not going to last forever. It seems like, I mean, Borders went away. That's so crazy. And now the real threat is internet sites like Amazon. Not just like Amazon. Amazon. That's it. Anyway, I bet this is good. I like to read stuff like this. I love books with a strong sense of place. This is by a good friend, Jessica Mills. This is a compilation of columns from Maximum Rock and Roll, the long-running black and white newspaper style punk rock zine. And yeah, my friend Jessica here in town, her whole family is awesome. She wrote this long-running column for them. She's a famous rock saxophonist. It's played with all kinds of bands. Going back to Less Than Jake, but with Citizen Fish, and I mean, she's toured with Jawbreaker. She's like kind of amazing. She's one of the, you know, most accomplished musicians in Albuquerque. A very cool person. Teaches, is also smart and a good writer and part of the zine community. And I love zines. This is really good. This is like real world, no nonsense, modern day generations parenting talks about raising cool, awesome kids with like a strong sense of justice. And she knows what she's talking about. Her family's great. And yeah, Jessica Mills is a touring musician, artist, activist, writer, teacher, and mother of two. Disappointed by run-of-the-mill parenting books that didn't speak to her experience. Yeah, this is cool. My mother wears combat boots. I read this. It's good. And AK Press is a pretty serious, like, anarchist press. A mark of quality for a huge section of counterculture. Yeah, if you know any unconventional new parents, this is a good one to get them. And it benefits a cool person. I don't know. I've read some David Foster Wallace. I like him. I recognize he's a top thinker in the world of nonfiction, especially, etc. I read Girl with the Curious Hair, which is an early work of his, compilation of short fiction. Didn't love it. Felt it left me cold. I've liked some essays that I've read from him over the years, like the title essay of this one I read in grad school a couple times. And he's got a really unique style with the footnotes heavy stuff. I kind of hate sending readers and being sent around, you know, all over, flipping to endnotes and footnotes. I try to avoid that personally. But you gotta acknowledge he has a unique style. Like, yeah, you always gotta acknowledge that. Like, in comedy, for instance, like, I don't like comedian Dennis Miller, but, like, you have to acknowledge he has a unique style. He kind of has a footnotes-laden style. And when you hear a unique style, you know, that is something. And Foster Wallace definitely has that. It does feel like he's asking every question, turning over every rock. And whatever I thought about him, when I saw that movie, The End of the Tour, which is based on interviews with him, I was totally won over. And I was like, oh no, this guy's a really interesting mind. I'm so basic. As soon as it's turned into a popular movie that I can access easily. No, maybe it's actually good. Prisma knows. But I like that YouTube channel, Right Conscious. I watch those writing videos sometimes. Though I disagree with them maybe 50% of the time sometimes. And don't know, 50. A percentage. I just, in general, find that anytime you say something decisively about something related to the arts, it's like, that's never true. But he likes and really respects Wallace and is like a real scholar of this author and has read everything by him. So, like, I don't know. When good minds consider something worth their time, it's like something to pay attention to a little bit. Doesn't this lady kind of look like Vladimir Putin? Am I insane? I'm just really seeing a facial resemblance there. I think the current day leader of Russia is hiding out in an old book cover. What? Anyway, this is a captivity book, a recent Freebox acquisition. Esther Wheelwright's journey from Puritan girl to Wabanaki captive to Mother Superior of the largest Catholic convent in French Canada is one of the most fascinating personal stories in the annals of what we call colonial history. Nice. I really think I want to read this. That's really interesting. I do like the history, and this is a very, nice book. I mean, as scary as this figure is. The Kamai book. Kayaks, dog sleds, bear hunting, bush pilots, smoked fish, mollusks, and other traditions of southwestern Alaska. I think I got this for research reasons, but also for my slow, but never forgetting plotting of a big kayak trip in Alaska. I want to kayak from Anchorage, Alaska, along the Aleutian Arm and the Aleutian Islands to Russia. So start at Anchorage, Cook Inlet there. Go all the way along the arm. That's the first warm season stretch. Stay at Unalaska. Population 5,000 or so right there for the winter. Next warm seasons, you island hop from here to here until you get over here. Probably some permit stuff to work out ahead of time. But it would be an awesome 2-year journey along emerald volcanoes. Oh yeah, they call it the birthplace of the winds. That's not ideal. Cool. Yeah, I'm not loving the whole birthplace of the winds nickname for the area I have a trip planned on someday. But, So that's why I have that. I reconsidered research. I should start collecting all those things together, keep them in one place. But I like books like this. There's a whole subgenre of books that could keep you alive if you have them and know the information and knowledge keeping books. There was kind of the Whole Earth catalog scene. The 1960s had a lot of books like that. Maybe the 80s too. There was a lot of fear of the end, late Cold War, yearning for simpler ways, thinking we might have to go back to that. Fortunately, everything improved right after the 80s, and now everything's great. Oh, this book is so cool if you know the Mutiny on the Bounty trilogy and appreciate it as the classics of adventure writing that those books are. Those books are amazing. But here's the true story of the Mutiny on the Bounty. Not all of it's flattering. But you see that the trilogy really did stick to facts quite a lot. It just dramatized within those facts. Something that gets left out is that they were all about breadfruit for feeding slaves. So they were part of the whole slavery thing. This book goes into that a bit. Love a good shipwreck or mutiny or life raft or sea adventure type story. Maybe it's in the blood of us all. Well, she also wrote The Endurance about Shackleton. Good old Shackleton. I was obsessed with that story for a while. We'll probably encounter some Shackleton books if we haven't already. Caroline Alexander. Yeah, this is a good book. I read it and I listened to it on an audiobook once. It stayed with me. Yeah. And the Teapot Dome scandal. It's crazy. This is a political scandal from the 20s, right? How Big Oil bought the Harding White House and tried to steal the country. 1935, 1920. Okay, yeah, this is a 20 story. I thought so. This is connected to some big Albuquerque topics. For one thing, one of the journalists that covered this story was Carl McGee, who owned the Albuquerque Tribune back in the day here in town. Also owned the patent on the parking meter. And he coined Scripps Howard's motto, something about giving light. The Teapot Dome scandal was just oil people buying politicians. Wonder if it would even be a scandal now if it happened, or if it would just be business as usual. I always meant to read this, and I will. And I'll probably do a City on the Edge podcast episode about it, because Carl McGee is a significant local figure for a number of reasons. One was that he owned Carlito Springs, this really cool resort up in the mountains, very historic, going back to when it was Whitcomb Springs, founded by a Civil War vet. He named that place after his son who died in a car wreck. Little Carl, Carlito. Anyway, this looks interesting. One of those historic topics that might come up on Jeopardy someday if you're a guest on there. Contestant. It is no doubt connected to everything. It's probably like the prequel to modern corruption. How Big Oil bought the Harding White House and tried to steal the country. I'm glad they stopped trying to do that. I think when I get to the New Mexico cases, I'm going to do a whole video on Arcadia's Images of America books, because this really is a cool series that I'm so glad exists. And if it didn't, there would be a void, a need. That said, these books can really vary in quality from author to author. Sometimes it's obvious the writers are just like postcard collectors typing up the captions on the back. Other times it's like real historians get let loose on these, and it's cool to see. I got this one when I was working on the chapter of my book that is about walking across the country, because we walked across the Smokies as part of that, and had a lot of experiences. And when you write about a place, you really should read a lot about it and immerse yourself in the topic and make sure that you're presenting it in a three-dimensional way. Like, imagine grids of data in every direction, and that you want to check all those boxes for every cubic square centimeter. You want all the information in about everything. You don't want to just mention 2 plants. You want to mention everything that's growing around if you can. If you want to draw that with a few lines, fine, but you should know a lot. Like Hemingway says, know the whole iceberg underneath what's showing on the surface. And put as much in as you can, like in a dimensional way, There's traits that make every place unique, and you got to include that stuff. And if you can include details that point to this or that thread in history, you can use those things metaphorically. You can use them to make the world bigger. It's pretty cool. Often in the Smokies, we would find old stills. You want to know about that a little bit, about Prohibition, about all that biz. But these are great books because they're full of these incredible images. And I enjoyed reading this one when I was writing episode 2 of What We Found When We Walked Across America. Whew. Well, that's the shelf. How's everybody doing out there? How is the world? Is it safe to go outside? I swear, I don't think I've ever had a bigger shock or juxtaposition of scenes than hiking on the Appalachian Trail in the Smokies, and then suddenly you leave the forested corridors of that trail, and the murmur of birds and critters, and suddenly you're in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, which is like the Las Vegas, Nevada of the South. Gatlinburg is crazy. I felt like I walked right out from the Appalachian Trail to an animatronic T-Rex roaring in front of the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum, and all these flashing signs, and I was like, what? Yeah, that's nice. Squirrel, people want to know, what are you wearing to this year's Met Gala? Squirrel. Which designers will you be repping? Hey. Cut dreadlocks out. This cat does not. Why don't you properly groom yourself? You're the same way. You just leave whole spots of your back alone forever. Was that a wink? This has been some of the first nonfiction from the collection that we looked at in a while. Previously, we looked at this paperback nonfiction case. Paperback nonfiction overflow. I guess the writing books are nonfiction. The weird books were nonfiction sometimes. And art crit and lit crit and all that biz. These cats. This cat. This cat. Art crit. Some of the antiques. Anyway, this will be a cool section to look at, I suppose. Alright, hope you're all doing well. Take care, everybody out there. Hope your lives are good. See ya.